mode. Check the police report. You get it. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Ready for a microphone? Oh, right. I thought they stopped that little bit. Welcome everyone to this press conference. KeepDarnellFree. My name is Mark Shepard. I'm a longtime friend of Darnell, almost 50 years, and I was very active in the struggle to keep him out of jail in 1984. And I just want to say a couple of things real quick. First of all, it's been 52 years that this case has been hanging over Darnell Summers' head. This is outrageous. This has to be dropped, and the charges have to be dropped with prejudice, and they can never be reinstated again. They failed twice, 1968 and 1984, and it's been proven that there is no legal, ethical, or practical grounds for proceeding with this case, and that's a quote from Wayne County Prosecutor John O'Hare in 1984. Secondly, we're not going to tolerate people who are political leaders, fighters for the people, being persecuted and brought under this kind of state repression. Unleashing white supremacy, calling for people to be locked up. We've got an Attorney General who wants to dominate the streets and sending unidentified agents after protesters. This cannot be tolerated. And the third thing is to the press, to the media. What have you been doing for the last 50 years on this case? What are you doing now? This needs to be investigated. There needs to be questions posed to these authorities, to the Michigan State Police, to the Wayne County, to the state of Michigan, to the federal officials. It's intolerable that people are not finding answers to why they're continuing to harass Darnell. So with that, I'd like to bring up Attorney Jeffrey Evans to say a few words, and then I'm going to read some statements from people who are supporting Darnell.
Right. Hands up, Darnell.
Good morning. On behalf of my brother, freedom fighter and soldier for justice, Darnell Summers, we stand in solidarity in the defense of him against the ongoing repression that's been exhibited through the state apparatus. There's been a lot of talk these days about police misconduct, and law enforcement misconduct, and police abuse is not only the physical abuse, but the abuse of their exercise of authority over citizens. Police terrorism manifests in many different ways. The charges that were falsely brought against Darnell Summers initially in 1968, when he was an outstanding Vietnam soldier in Vietnam, trying to protect the principles that the country supposedly represents. He was in Vietnam. He became an anti-war activist and organized against the war. And at the same time, during the late 60s, was actively involved in the social resistance here in the United States that was resisted the oppression that existed then, the COINTELPRO program of the government, whose specific objective was to neutralize the Black Liberation Movement, focused on groups such as the Black Panther Party, the Nation of Islam, the Republic of Africa. And it was in that context, specifically with what was happening out in Easton, Michigan at the time, the Malcolm X Cultural Center. There was a state apparatus that was an arm of COINTELPRO. In Michigan, they called it the Red Squad, that conducted surveillance, massive surveillance of activists and other folks who were organized against the status quo of the government at that time. And out of that surveillance of activists, a trooper was killed, and and Darnell Summers was falsely accused of being involved in that. In 1968, he was extradited back from Vietnam, where he was serving in the military. The charges at that time that were based on incredible lying individual, the charges ultimately were dismissed in '68 because the government understood that they did not have a case against Darnell. Then some 13, 14 years later, after Darnell had left the country and took up residence in Germany and continued in activism, anti-war movement, active amongst the troops in Germany, and also advocating against the repression of the military worldwide. The charges were reinstated against Darnell in 82, 83. He was again extradited back from Germany on charges of first-degree murder. Each time that those charges were brought for first-degree murder, Darnell Summers was out on bond, which was an exceptional occurrence given the nature of the criminal justice system. But not only was he allowed out on bond, he was able to travel and return to Germany or outside the jurisdiction. At any rate, for the second time in 1983, the charges were again dismissed because of the incredulous nature and incredible nature of these trumped-up charges against these brothers. And now, 52 years since 1968, we're now in 2020. The government apparatus, the state apparatus, the Michigan State Police, are still engaged in their surveillance, oppressive surveillance of Darnell Summers. The surveillance itself is a manifestation of terror when that surveillance is unwarranted. And so, again, the state has saw fit to investigate Darnell as he returned to the U.S. To conduct his application of filmmaking. He's in the process of putting together a documentary. At this point, so he enters the United States after several years of being away. He's stopped at the airport by Michigan State Police, questioned him, a form of harassment, asking about questions of he and his son, trying to keep what he was doing, harassment, psychological terror, again, against this man. And so it didn't stop there, because a few days later, about a week later, he about his own affairs with his friend and son, getting some gas at a gas station, and the state trooper then ride down on him, as he said, and with a search warrant this time for his DNA and to seize his cell phone. There was absolutely no physical evidence in the first and second trial. And what is significant is that the Wayne County prosecutor, John D. O'Hare, made a statement to the court on record that there was no ethical or legal reason to pursue charges against Darnell Summers. He said that in '82. So now, fast forward 40 years later, they're still questioning him about this incident in 1968. And so the fact that they execute a search warrant for his DNA and his cell phone, another manifestation of terror. Cell phone, how could the cell phone possibly have any evidence of something that happened in 1968 when cell phones weren't even thought of in 1968? So we are here, we want the community to understand the pervasive nature of state abuse of authority. And unless the people become aware and collectively resist this, they will continue. And then it's not until we raise the voices in opposition to what the government is doing with Darnell Summers, they will continue. Darnell Summers has been the voice of the voiceless, and he continues to be that. And as he continues to be the voice, we in solidarity express the will of the people to keep your hands off Darnell's summer.
Hands off, Darnell.
Hands off. Hands off. Whoa. Whoa. All right. Thank you so much. We have a number of other people who want to make some remarks. Among them, Abiomi Azikwe from Moratorium Now, David Cripps, attorney with the National Lawyers Guild, Dan from Detroit Will Breathe, and of course Darnell himself. At this time though, I want to make a couple of statements. Someone prepared a very special poem for this occasion, and I thought it's a bit long, but it's very good. To honor his request and to keep up the spirit of this protest against this outrageous thing I'm going to do. I'm going to read this poem. First of all, there's a little bit of an introduction. This is called Hashtag Keep Darnell Free by Charles Ezra Farrell, also known as Kariuki Wa Inuit. Welcome to all those who love freedom. Welcome to all those who love justice. Welcome to all those who seek to forge a world where artificial boundaries disappear and the unity and diversity of humanity is celebrated. Welcome to all those who seek to keep Darnell Stephen Summers free. My name is Charles Ezra Farrell, and I am the former Vice President of Public Programs and Community Engagement at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. Now I serve as Vice President of Development and Global Programs at the Yiga Foundation, a nonprofit charitable organization. The Yiga Foundation has begun discussing developing a program series focused on eradicating global homelessness and centered on the creative work of Darnell Stephen Summers as an internationally recognized film documentarian, musician, social justice and human rights advocate, and activist. Darnell has captured absolutely stunning footage of images and interviews of the homeless in Berlin and Detroit. I was shocked to learn that our dear brother Darnell Stephen Summers had been harassed by search warrants to extract his DNA, snatch his mobile phone, and threaten it with innuendo. But then in this political heightened anti-democratic climate, where autocrats with blonde hair and orange pigment are wearing red baseball caps or blue uniforms, anything can happen. This is why we're calling on all livers of justice to lock arms with Darnell Stephen Summers. I offer this following poem. Hashtag Keep Darnell Free. Hashtag Keep Darnell Free. Hashtag Keep Darnell Free. The past is present. The repetition of brutal acts of political persecution. Date sampling. 1968, 1984, 2020. New hands of oppression, guided by the same criminal impulse to incarcerate, freedom of expression and lovers of freedom. Attempts to silence mass voices, the conscious creatives through manufacturing lies and planning false evidence, fertilized with viciousness and a total disdain for the truth. Hashtag Keep Darnell Free. Hashtag Keep Darnell Free. Hashtag Keep Darnell Free. We know why. They are paid mercenaries. More frontal in this climate of naked hate. Agent Orange, chemical and non-chemical warfare, connects Berlin to Detroit, Louisiana to Detroit, Iran to Detroit, Iraq to Detroit, Palestine to Detroit, Guyana to Detroit, all roads from Inkster to Detroit. The Malcolm X Cultural Center in 1968, a street of dreams on heresy, filming harsh realities, exposing the charred glass edge of contradictions and broken mirror realities. A land of great affluence and mass homelessness. Jails packed with 2 million people of color, mostly black young men. Massive foreclosures and homelessness, surrounded by fresh Great Lakes in a city where 140,000 homes have water shut-offs. Who is the real criminal? Ghost witnesses evaporate into thin air. The moment their mouths were pried open and stuffed with fabrications. Lynch ropes, lying dead on the open streets for hours in a pool of blood, shot 7 times close range. RV chased and crashed, black youth death. Blue cars with round red lights, mostly white. Search warrants, unwarranted, issued, signed in red blood, seized mobile devices,
insert swab in mouth to extract DNA cells. They are scheming untruths to silence us, you, me, us. Hashtag KeepDarnellFree. Hashtag KeepDarnellFree. Hashtag KeepDarnellFree. We will breathe. We will speak. We are fearless, analytic, independent, resilient human beings. The pit you dig for us, you will fall in. Truth and justice, and our victory will prevail. 8 minutes, 46 seconds in May, exploded global thunder. The people hit the streets to say no. This has got to stop now. White knee on black neck. The pressure of racism causes rebellions. Can serial killers bent on violence against humanity really reform themselves? They teach war. They practice it. They worship it at their altars. Violence overflows everywhere in this culture. Truth denial. In Media, Pennsylvania, 1971, Vietnam draft dodgers broke into an FBI building to destroy their records, but found COINTELPRO documents confirming a deadly federal conspiracy to kill blacks, the uncontrollable ones, the ones who can influence others, the orators. Hashtag KeepDarnellFree. Hashtag KeepDarnellFree. Hashtag KeepDarnellFree. Darnell Summers. KeepDarnellFree. Darnell is you. Darnell is me. This is a 52-year-old protracted war. Who's winning? Who will win? Tactics of oppression will not cause us to break rank. We will stand together, fiercely, and rise up to new heights, to leap forward into the freer tomorrow. The people are standing together, calling out with one global voice, under your blue, constant green light of eye of injustice, collecting data, tainted by racism and class bias. Let's interlock our arms around this body, who they seek to snatch from us as a political prisoner. We remember the false persecution. Ahmad Rahman, Imam Jamil Al-Amin, Ngugi wa Thiong'o, Mumia Abu Jamal, Assata Shakur, railroading. We must place the devil on the cross. Say no. No to racist and self-hating police. No to tyranny. No to false persecutions. No to crucifixions. No to lynching. No to medieval metal cuffs. And no to medieval small rooms with metal bars or locked metal doors. No, bully. No, we're not scared of you. Your lies dissolve in our truth. You have nothing real, because Darnell's heart is pure. There is no record, no branded internal memories that require evaporation or erasure. His innocence allows for our deep belly laughter. You must live in your world of false illusion. This is not 1619, 1955, 1965, 1968, 1992, 2012. This is 2020, the year of Sankofa. 2020. Victory is ours. Fighting is winning. Hashtag KeepDarnellFree. Hashtag KeepDarnellFree. Hashtag KeepDarnellFree.
KeepDarnellFree.
All right.
Darnell-free.
I'd like to read one other statement, then I'd like to ask Abiyomi to speak. This is from a Palestinian poet named Farid Bitar. I am Farid Bitar, Palestinian poet living in New York City. I am a published poet with 4 books. I personally know Darnell Summers. He is an outstanding human being and a great friend activist. I hereby declare that he is of sound and righteous character. These charges are bogus and need to be dropped for good. This is a conspiracy by the Michigan State Police and the government of Trump. With respects, Farid Bitar, poet. Abiyomi?
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you so much, Mark. It's good to see you after all these years. It's good to see Darnell after all these years. Unfortunately, under these circumstances, I worked on this case back in 1982, 1983 when I was a young man. And that's been a long time ago. And we're here again to stand in solidarity with Darnell Summers. He comes from a wonderful musical family. He's a longtime activist, and he deserves the support of all people here in the city of Detroit and throughout the country. I'm also happy to see our youth comrades out here from Detroit Will Bleed. They got a taste just this past summer of police repression, of state repression, and the lies the manufacturing of lies by the law enforcement authorities here in the city of Detroit. So they can see clearly this is not a new struggle. This is a historical struggle that's been going on now for over 400 years in North America. So we're with you, Darnell, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure that these bogus charges are squashed once again. All power to the people, free all the people.
Free Darnell.
Free Darnell. Thank you, Darnell. I'd like to ask Sammy to come up and read a statement that we received from another attorney.
Hi, my name is Sammy Lewis. I am with Deutschsprachige, and I am reading the statement of Ellis Bull, an attorney. In 1976, Darnell made a cold call to me about assisting a public housing rent strike in Inkster. Arriving at the Malcolm X Cultural Center for a packed and raucous evening meeting, mostly of women, he and other organizers brought me into a separate room to review details and paperwork. I knew but little about tenants' rights except for one principle. If a landlord does not provide basic services such as heat, electricity, paint on the walls, and a pest-free dwelling, the tenant has the legal right to withhold all or a portion of the rent. Darnell insisted there were 1,000 violations and the Inkster Court was part of the problem. We went out and addressed the crowd. Under Darnell's guidance, I learned the tenant law in a hurry. We filed several successful suits, spinning the Inkster judge's head round. Finally, we went to arbitration with Edward Huck Watson as one arbitrator and Sam McCargo as the lead arbitrator. We got what we wanted. Meanwhile, at an Inkster court hearing, there was a hallway scuffle with police. Darnell and Huck were arrested and charged with 2-year misdemeanors. Neil Bush and I took them into a Wayne County jury. If convicted, Darnell would have faced the bitter wrath of police angry about the Gomser killing. I cross-examined one of the witnesses against him, the lawyer for the Inkster Housing Commission, Bernard Freeman, who is now a federal judge. His testimony proved to be harmless, acquittal. With the Gomser killing in the background, Darnell risked his own freedom by taking public leadership in the rent strike. For that, he has my undying respect. Hands off Darnell Summers.
Reader. Darnell Summers.
Thank you. Now I'd like to ask Dan from Detroit Will Breathe to come up and say a few words.
Hello everyone. I'll just start. Detroit Will Breathe stands in solidarity with Mr. Summers and condemns his political repression by Michigan State Police. This persecution goes back and is reminiscent of the Red Squad's attempts to target Mr. Summers for his political activities. This infamous unit, which surveilled, infiltrated, and policed black and leftist activists, was disbanded in 1976 after it was found to have engaged in rampant constitutional and civil rights violations. So it is especially disturbing that now, in 2020, the political persecution of Mr. Summers is beginning again with a targeted campaign of harassment on false charges that were brought and dropped decades ago for lack of evidence. The ongoing harassment of Mr. Summers demonstrates very clearly that the police are a political agency motivated to uphold structures of racism and inequality, and to repress anyone who challenges those structures. In the past several months of protests, a new generation of activists has seen the return of forms of political repression by law enforcement that haunted generations before us. We've seen it in drone surveillance of Detroit protests by police, customs, and border control. We've seen it in exceptionally violent responses to non-violent Black Lives Matter protests. In a stark contrast to the docile response to right-wingers armed outside of the TCF Center trying to disrupt the Democratic vote counting. As we've seen also Chief Craig red-baiting on Fox News, spreading propaganda that BLM protests are led by trained Marxists. Labeling activists fighting as subversives is a barely coded form of anti-black racism that is meant to excuse state repression of racial justice movements. We recognize the long lineage of these tactics, and we denounce their past and present deployment. The politically motivated harassment of Mr. Summers by law enforcement must stop.
Hands off Darnell.
Thank you. I'd like to have someone read one more statement.
Hi, I'm Shoshana, sister of the late Mayor Attorney Shokwela Bunga. And Darnell, I would just want to say on behalf of my brother, who obviously can't be here because he's made his transition, but he would be definitely sad and hurt over this course of this. And it's just unjust and wrong. Okay, the statement that I'm reading is Ed Watson, spokesperson for Malcolm X Cultural Center of Inkster, co-host Time for the People, WCHB Radio, 1970s. We have all gotten accustomed to the government in our lives, taxes, licenses, seat belts, being pulled over by the police who make no mistake are agents of the state. But the state has a more sinister, lethal side that also too often goes unnoticed unless you've been on the receiving end. No-knock warrants, warrantless searches, seizure of property, and death, as we've witnessed this year. The kidnapping of citizens from right off the streets by unidentifiable agents of the state. We've even witnessed regular U.S. troops on the streets of America. Darnell Summers, my friend, has been subjected to another level of the state's power for over 50 years. No citizen should be subjected to the unlawful seizure of property, harassment of friends and family, and the uncertainty of his liberty. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hands off Darnell.
I'd like to read one more statement, and then I'm going to ask David Cripps from the National Lawyers Guild to make a statement. This is from Jerry Condon. He's a Vietnam-era veteran and the recent past president of Veterans for Peace. My name is Jerry Condon. I'm a Vietnam-era veteran and recent past president of Veterans for Peace. I'm personally acquainted with Darnell Summers, whom I met nearly a decade ago while I was visiting Germany. Darnell Summers is well known in the U.S. and Europe as a dedicated activist for peace and justice and as a talented filmmaker. Many people on both continents are aware that Darnell has been repeatedly targeted by the Michigan State Police and wrongly accused of a murder of a police officer in 1968. Because there was no credible evidence or witness, these charges were dropped decades ago. The Michigan State Police are once again threatening and harassing Darnell Summers, having recently seized his phone and taken a DNA swab. It is incredible that in these days of Black Lives Matter, when police departments all over the U.S. are under increased scrutiny for the harassment and murder of African Americans, the Michigan State Police are targeting a cherished black leader, now a respected elder. This must end immediately. Reasonable people must ask why the harassment and threats continue. Would the Michigan State Police pay any attention to Darnell Summers if he were not a proud black man who continues his activism as a filmmaker? Are they afraid that their own history of racist violence would be further exposed? If that is the case, they're making a big mistake right now. If Darnell Summers is arrested and charged with the very serious crime of murder of a police officer, a national and international campaign will be mounted on his behalf. Many veterans and veteran organizations will no doubt be part of this campaign. A massive legal and political defense will lead to the vindication of Darnell Summers, while revealing racism, corruption, and malfeasance within the Michigan State Police and the State Prosecutor's Office. On behalf of many veterans who admire Darnell Summers for his long history of anti-war activism, I call for an end to the unjust, unfair, and unwise political persecution of Darnell Summers. We demand that the political persecution of Darnell Summers be ended immediately.
the resources of the state of Michigan would be much better directed in ending the racist violence of this police department once and for all. David?
Thank you.
My name is David Cripps. I'm here as a representative of the local and National Lawyers Guild chapter. And we have recently passed a resolution in an executive session showing 100% support behind Darnell Summers in this case. The Lawyers Guild has always believed that the criminal justice system, the police departments, the various prosecutors' offices should never be used as a tool of political oppression. And we believe that Darnell Summers, as to what he has gone through for years and years and years, has been a victim of that oppression by the continual harassment and falsehoods that have been used against him purely, as I see it, and as the Guild sees it, for political reasons. So the Guild is here to say that we are 100% behind you, Darnell, and we'll be there to give you any support that's needed. On a personal note, I would say this. Back in early 1980s, I also was one of the lawyers involved in trying to get this case dismissed against Darnell Summers with prejudice. And it was with great disappointment, after reviewing the complete record and the lack of any kind of believable, tangible evidence, that the prosecutor's office failed in its duty to have dismissed this case with prejudice to put this unfair harassment of Darnell Summers to an end. Unfortunately, as we all know, political oppression continues. The Lawyers Guild has been involved, and it's involved in continual fighting political oppression, including all the false arrests that happened this summer with all the courageous people involved in protests regarding the racial issues that are going on in this country. So the oppression through the political system, through the arrest, and now prosecution of over 400 people now in our local court is continuing. The last thing I would say is I did get a chance to meet Darnell back in the 80s when this case was reinitiated. I have been involved in a lot of criminal litigation, most of which lasts a year or two or maybe 5 years at most. This man has been subject of a political prosecution since the 60s. If you can imagine the strength and character that he has shown through this continual harassment of him, speaks so highly of what a strong individual he is. So I give him so much credit and so much pride in watching him fight these struggles over the years. And the Guild will always be there for you to give whatever support we can and support through this purely political oppression that's been brought against you. Thank you.
Hands off Daryl!
I'd like to read quickly 3 more important statements and then ask Darnell. Next is from Heinrich Bucher. He's from Berlin. He runs the Co-op Anti-War Cafe in Berlin. He's a member of the World Beyond War chapter in Berlin and a number of other peace and anti-war organizations. Hereby, I declare my full solidarity with Darnell Summers, who I know for quite a few years here in Berlin. Here in Berlin, we are very shocked to have been recently notified that authorities in the U.S. are again trying to set Darnell Summers up for a political prosecution using the same false charge of murder against him that has been used in the past. And this, even after the U.S. government's own witnesses twice previously recanted their stories in 1968 and 1983, stating that their affidavits obviously had been scripted by the authorities. This comes at a time when African Americans, together with many other progressive groups, have been protesting against police violence, social injustice, and discrimination in the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd. Excuse me. I have witnessed Darnell here in Berlin as an outspoken Vietnam veteran and anti-war activist. He was also very active as a documentary filmmaker and musician. We worked together on some projects. All this has parallels with the political persecution of people like Mumia Abu-Jamal, Leonard Peltier, and even Julian Assange. And it is in line with a prison system in the U.S. which has to be fundamentally changed. All this has to stop. We hereby strongly protest against the treatment and harassment Darnell Stephen Summers is subjected to. Next, I'd like to read a statement from an outstanding veteran fighter in Detroit, Malik Yakini. He's an activist, musician, and urban farmer. Darnell Summers has endured unjust attacks by the state of Michigan for more than 50 years. Baseless charges that he murdered a Michigan State Police officer were dismissed in 1969 and again in 1984. Now the state is gearing up again to charge Darnell for a third time. Darnell's real offense was that he was a leader in the Malcolm X Cultural Center in Inkster, Michigan, at the time that city exploded in rebellion. His offense now is that he has remained a relentless anti-imperialist fighter, anti-war activist, and revolutionary filmmaker. The question that freedom-loving people must ask ourselves is, why are they coming for Darnell again now? Clearly, this renewed harassment is part of a larger trend of political repression and demonizing of the left by forces that seek to maintain continued concentration of power in the hands of a few wealthy whites. I was involved in the efforts to defend Darnell Summers in 1983 and stand in solidarity with him now as he continues his fight to remain free and advance a vision of a world characterized by justice and equity. And finally, I'd like to read a statement by another veteran fighter for the people and an outstanding son of Detroit, John Sinclair, revolutionary poet and former political prisoner. John says, Darnell Summers never did nothing to nobody. Why the police are trumping these charges up makes no sense to me whatsoever. They were wrong 52 years ago, they were wrong in the 80s, and they're even more wrong today. I wonder what's motivating them, except the fact that Darnell is charged with doing something bad to a police officer, and they never forget. Pure vindictiveness of some sort, I would think. I'll do whatever I can possibly do to help prevent any railroad taking place over his body, because I hate that. Defend Darnell Summers. John Sinclair. And now, I'd like to ask Darnell Summers himself to speak.
You know, no person, there's a saying, you know, no man is an island, no woman is an island. And you get your strength, cut that shit down. You get your strength from your friends, from your family, from your comrades, from your colleagues. I'm no stronger than, I'm like a tree in the forest. I'm no stronger than the forest. In fact, the forest is stronger than me. All right? I have many friends here. I have friends here I've known for 60-some years, 50 years. I just met today, and I'm gratified to be here with all the people who support the case. But it's not just about me. It's about the millions of people who are languishing in the prisons of America, and the tactics that are employed by this state, by this government, to imprison these people, to persecute these people, to oppress these people. They come from the oppressed sections of this country. And beyond that, beyond the borders of this country, they also affect imprisonments, execution, assassinations. You know, as a Vietnam veteran, I'm opposed to the imperialistic wars, the adventures, the military adventures of this government. I didn't support it before the war, during the war, and after the war. And I've been involved with people who have been dedicated to the struggle against U.S. imperialism, along with its allies, France, Germany, England, you name it, NATO, they're all involved. So it's not just about me. It's about this system. It's about their legal system. My case kind of, and I've been telling people for a long time, my case demonstrates their treachery. I'm fortunate enough to have had a strong defense team and public support. Those two things together made us victorious. But that can have another result also. But we were victorious, and we should celebrate that. And I'm here today to speak in behalf of not only the prisoners of America, but the prisoners worldwide, and also for all the soldiers in the United States military and all other militaries who are resisting imperialist war. And that's a fact. I'm wearing a jacket here, which is the jacket of a deserter. Now it has my unit. In fact, we shared the same unit, 440th Signal Battalion, over 40 years ago. He was a young man when he gave me this tunic. This is my unit in Vietnam, 25th American Division. And it's very important for us to reach out to the young people, to the young soldiers, and tell them about our experiences so they can learn from them. And they are now, you know, leading the struggle inside the military. It's a very complex situation. 52 years of my life. I can remember telling my first wife, who actually was involved in terms of the police coming to her parents' house, questioning her in Germany. So from the very beginning, she experienced the terrible situation that did unfold. And then my second wife, I told her, it was incredulous, she couldn't believe it, that one day perhaps, and that was in 1982, excuse me, that I might be arrested. How could that happen? 14 years later, you've already been released. They've already had witnesses say that it was all a lie, it was scripted by the police. How could this happen? Now, 37 years later, here we are again. There's no doubt in my mind that I'm the only suspect for them. And the whole subject, the whole target of this investigation is about me. But beyond that, it's also about the things that I'm involved in. You know, the potential for fighting this system. That scares them to death. The potential for people to recognize the nature of this system. And these are the kind of activities that I'm involved in, along with other people. I don't operate alone. You know, this isn't about, I'm not a superhero. It's not about this. It's about people coming together and jointly oppressing this system. I'm happy to see the youth out here, you know, but as a, what do you call people? A senior citizen? Elder. An elder. You know, let me tell you this. You know, let this be clear. We old people got a role to play too. And as long as we got energy and determination, we're going to make our contribution. You know, we're not behind you, we're right alongside you. That's right. Check that out. And when I have to get behind, I'll get behind that. You know, if I'm in a wheelchair, you know, whatever it takes, you know, we're here to deal with this situation. I am very impressed with the spirit of this movement. Detroit will breathe, Black Lives Matter. We can go right down the line. All the different committees in all of the cities of the United States. I live in Berlin, and there was a Black Saturday demonstration all over the world. And okay. Where was it?
Berlin.
Well, she was just complaining about the system, which I, you know, take every opportunity. We'll check her out later. But what was it?
Berlin.
Oh, Black Saturday. You're right, exactly. Thank you very much. all over the world, people call for this demonstration, Black Saturday. And people from the South Pole to the North Pole, from Timbuktu to Kalamazoo, got on the streets of their cities and demonstrated. I was in the city which had the largest demonstration outside the United States. It was phenomenal. It was, I couldn't believe it. There was a woman from Albania, and she was holding up a sign from Maya Angelou and Muhammad Ali. And I went over to her and I talked to her. She was very much impressed with Maya Angelou. Just imagine a 20-year-old woman from Albania reading Maya Angelou. And that means that some things are international, that cross borders, that cross ethnic groups, that cross a lot of different experiences. And then I asked her about Muhammad Ali, you know, and I responded, he's a bad man. She said, yeah, he's a bad man. So he used to say that everybody in the world knew who he was. And it's true, you know, and they stood for something. And that spirit lives on. For 52 years, started me to think about several things. I could have been in prison for 52 years of my life. And that's something to think about. But even more than that is the realization that there are people in prison who have indeed suffered that fate. And a lot of them, quote unquote, are innocent. Innocent. We have the Innocent Project. We have a lot of different organizations dealing with the question of proving people's innocence, getting DNA and all of these different things to help in that cause. You know, we have to, and I demand, and I'm not talking to Biden or Trump, I'm talking to the people of the United States and the people of the world, that we come together and we demand that they let our people go.
That's right.
Period.
That's right.
Period. I don't need Biden for that.
That's right. That's right.
I'm not going to wait on him.
That's right.
We have to do it.
That's right.
We have to make that demand. I was talking to somebody about the French Revolution. I remember, you know, even as a kid, you see these things. I got all these movies. And one of the things I did remember was them, the first thing they did was storm the Bastille.
That's right.
That's the first thing they did. And this is what we have to do. We're going to have to storm these institutions and release these people. Because as somebody, I think said earlier, this is some medieval stuff. You don't lock people in cages. I've been in them cages. In Vietnam, you know, I was tortured there. I understand it. I saw things I couldn't believe, you know, horrible. The Vietnam War was a crime against humanity. I didn't support it, and about 70% of the other soldiers didn't support it. But they were locked in circumstances. But many of them resisted. Let's make no mistake about it. Right. None of the time. So, as we stand here today, always, as I said, it's not just about Darnell. Because this can happen to anybody. Anybody can walk up to you at a gas station and demand, say, we can take your DNA sample voluntarily, excuse me, or involuntarily, sure. Well, what they're telling you is, I've got a badge and a gun, and I'll shoot your ass if you resist. This is what they're telling you. I didn't give him that damn permission. Why are you doing this to me? Why would you do this to anyone else? Why? They have to answer these questions. As my friend, you listen, Mark, and everyone else here who's worked on my case, everybody here who's here today, you're doing the right thing, but not for me. It's bigger than me. You've got to understand that. You know? It's bigger than me. So we're going to try to make every effort we can to bring this treacherous case to light, the different aspects of it, how they operate. The Michigan State Police Forensic Laboratory is how many times have they sent people to prison from this building for nothing? How many times have they manipulated evidence? The Red Squad is a throwback to the McCarthy era. Pure and simple. Now, they may have given it another name, but it still operates. Yep. Obviously, because they're still after me on the same bullshit charges. It's very simple. The press was complicit in this whole operation. They lied, you know, they told terrific stories, never tried to seek the truth. It's very clear. And our responsibility is to forge unity among all people who want to come together in a common cause. Yes, I'm a black man living in a racist society. Was born in a racist society. And so, but we have other people, other ethnic groups that are also oppressed, you know? No one's special in the question. Oppression does not discriminate in any way, not at all. So we have to forge unity and move forward together. Any questions?
Darnell.
Hashtag KeepDarnellFree. So, anybody got any questions?
Michael Shaw from the MSP, Michigan State Police, says you're still a suspect in the murder of a state trooper that happened in 1968. What would you want to say to Michael Shaw?
You know, well, he's pursuing a direction that clearly demonstrates that this is a political case, because there's no evidence of me killing anyone. Their own witnesses recanted their testimony and said that the testimony was scripted by the police. Listen, in 1983, no, excuse me, in 1982, I was brought back, I think it was, could have been June. And I was in jail for about 5 months. Then I got out on bond. My parents got me out on bond. It was close to Christmas. I think it was October when I got out. And so they had taken my passport. It was coming up to Christmas. And then their witnesses, their main witness had recanted her testimony, stating that she had been kept in prison for 6 months because they wanted her to testify against me. The day I came back to the United States, she told her she wouldn't testify. It got close to Christmas. Our attorneys made a motion. Now I want you to check this out good. Our attorneys made a motion that I get my passport back and that I be allowed to go back to Germany to celebrate Christmas with my family. Now keep in mind that I was charged with the first-degree murder of a policeman. Judge Joseph B. Sullivan, upon hearing the motion, looked at the prosecution and asked them, did they have any objections? They said no. Wow. No. I got the documents, I got the court order. I can show it to you. You understand? So, under what circumstances would you allow a black man to leave the country, on first-degree murder charges on the count? This guy's an idiot. First of all, he needs to go back to fucking school. Number one. All right? So I did, in fact, go back to Germany. And I think the whole thing behind that was they didn't want me to come back because their case was falling apart, you know? That is all public record, the court record, in the court record, all right? So, let him answer that question. Why am I a suspect when you let me go? Why am I a suspect when I can go visit, leave the country in an airplane, you know, and then I came back because we were kicking their ass, all right? They got a good ass whipping, you know? And now, I have to thank my attorneys. I have to say something to Jeff Edison, who is the National Conference, one of the members of the National Conference of Black Lawyers. He and Trump were the member, and it still exists to this very day. And we need these organizations, you know? I think when lawyers look at my case, you know, the lawyers who stand for justice and equality, they're going to come forward. There's no question about it. The National Lawyers Guild. In fact, there's something you don't know. We were trying to find lawyers for the rent strike. And so we were calling all over the place. And I called New York. I don't know who I talked to, but they recommended Paul Ellis, you know, and I did. And the rest is history, you know. So that's how it started. Well, thank you to the National Lawyers Guild. We have been working with them for 40, 50 years. Thank you very much. And so we need, it's the same thing with the National Conference of Black Lawyers. You know, we've been working with them. Chokwe Lumumba and Jeffrey Edison. There is no question that this man is carrying on that tradition. And I'll tell you this right now, we will win. We will win. Understand that, you know? Believe that. In my lifetime. You hear that, young man?
I heard
We got another question. Anybody got a question?
I think you answered all mine.
Did you want to say something about the conversation? Can you tell us Now, I'm going to assume my journalist role. Can you tell us something about the different countries?
Certainly. National Conference of Black Lawyers was first formed in 1968 in the midst of the national uprising and social challenges, fight against repression, and mission of the NCBL is to serve as the legal arm of the Black Revolution. At that time, as I mentioned earlier, the government was engaged in its efforts to destroy the liberation movements at the time. And so, in that context, that NCBL was formed and has been an activist organization since then, fighting for social justice, liberation of Africans, not only here domestically, but internationally, on the continent of Africa, and also in the Caribbean. So, continue that struggle, victory is certain.
I have a message that I just received. I want to read it to you. Well, let me just say that, here it is. This is from Gloria House, who's also known as Mama Darnell, and she sends this message in solidarity to Brother Darnell. We are African people. The agents of repression in the United States are continuing their war against us. I join other brothers and sisters in demanding an end to the multiple forms of state violence and persecution brought against Darnell Summers over so many years. These attacks have caused grievous harm to him and his family. They are outrageous human rights violations which we, the community, must resist, especially in this era of escalating U.S. police violence and repression. That's from Dr. Gloria House, poet, educator, activist, professor emeritus at University of Michigan Dearborn and Wayne State University.
All right.
I'd like to close with one. Oh, come on. You have a question?
No.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. You know, one other thing. I'd like to say to all the law programs and all the universities to examine this case. I'll come and talk about this case in detail. You know, or have National Lawyers Guild, you know, on my behalf. The Black Lawyers National Conference of Black Lawyers, speak on my behalf. We're ready to talk about this case because I've always thought that this case, my particular case, would show, expose, educate, indicate what we need to do to fight this system. You know, there's this legal thing. On one hand, you have to recognize that it exists. But we're not tied to its procedure necessarily. You know, we have to find ways, you know, methods to circumvent the oppression. We have to find a new way of thinking. Think like my little cousin says, think outside the box. You know, and actually, in my case, they were thinking outside the box. I wouldn't be standing here if these are attorneys will not have thought outside the box. We can no longer go with the traditional methods. That's out because they don't play fair. They got another rule book. You understand? As long as you try to play by their rules, you'll lose. One important thing is to garner support, cultivate support outside of the courtroom among the masses of people. This is a crucial part of it. Just one more statement. I get nervous when the lawyer tells me we'll take care of it at the trial. One lawyer told me that. I told him, I haven't done anything. Why should I go to trial? What am I trying to prove? My own innocence? When I know I'm innocent and they know I'm innocent? And this is part of the problem. Right now they're trying to cook up some shit against me. Right now. You know? We have to challenge them in court, outside of court, whatever it takes. If we got to go to Pluto to do it, then this is what we got to do. I'm serious. You know? This shit is over. They messed with the wrong situation because this is so blatant, so obvious. And that's not to say they haven't had other blatant and obvious situations. But we're strong in this case because I'm still relatively free.
All right.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, I'm Diane. I'm a warrior, but I'm cold.
Make you a cold warrior.
I can't hear. Could y'all hold it down for a minute? Yeah, I'm
I've been covering a number of cases of people in prison and in Michigan that have been in prison since the 70s for times in which similar situations happened. Cases I'm thinking about today. Their witnesses were cancer and were subverted in being able to tell the jury that their testimony was false. And I wonder if you'll be able to come forward at some point and they need support to come out. I'll send you the stories.
Okay, good. Of course.
And yeah, like you're so right. There's so many people in prison now that still are victims of the same thing. That we're fortunate to struggle.
Good seeing y'all. I got it.